Hi again. Sorry it's been a couple of weeks since I've last posted a video. I've been changing jobs, so I start a new job on Monday. So I've been in the process of handing over a lot of my projects and clients to the new consultants. I had a request going back about 3 weeks now from Andy Hull to do with, I believe he works in the wine industry, and he's looking for. They have a custom entity which is a quick order, which they record, I think, some address details, telephone and postcode. He was looking for some kind of plugin that would then look at the contact entity for matching on any of those three fields, so telephone, postcode or address, and then retrieve all of those contacts, but also then for each of those retrieve contacts, if any of the other details were different, to then retrieve any other related contacts within the system and propagate through all of those, and then again, so keep iterating through all of the child contacts until you don't retrieve any additional relationships. Store these in a duplicates repository and relate the order to an individual contact, so it would be a row per contact retrieved. That was one of the first diagrams that was presented. This was trying to extend on it to show that the original order could have found a match on this postcode 2020 or a phone number, but then based on the phone number of that retrieved contact could then go off and retrieve additional contacts. I think Marco did another diagram which sort of explained it a little bit further because it was showing distinct information. So his example was Bill Gates' phone number could match Steve Ballmer's, but then the address is different on Steve Ballmer's to what was actually in the original order, and that could then go and find this additional record. So what I've done is within CRM, under the sales area, I've created this quick orders entity, which is very simplistic at the moment. Contains just a title, possibly could do with some kind of order number, address, which at the moment I'm just matching the city because I've got some existing demo data in there that's only got city information, hasn't got line 1 and so on. I have put a few postcodes in to cause various child relationships to occur, likewise with telephone numbers. So that's all that entity contains at the moment, and related to that is a duplicates entity, which I'll have to show you through the customizations. So if I go into my solution, I've created a contact matching solution, and within my duplicate entity on the form, it contains a lookup to the contact that's been matched and the relevant order that triggered it. I don't know if there was any additional information required. I think Andy's original had this responsibility, but obviously you could extend on this and add whatever fields you want to that duplicates entity. I think there was a little bit of confusion going around the thread on Google Plus to do with whether it was a duplicate detection system, but I think that's kind of been parked. It's not actually a duplicate detection system. It's more to find any related records with the original starting information from the order. So there could be wholly unrelated contacts who are only by one single line of information that's related to subordinate contacts. So it's not really a duplicate detection system as such. It's just finding that chain of relationships down the tree. So if I go across to what I've done in Visual Studio, I've created a new plugin using the developer toolkit. I had registered it on a create and an update, as you can see here in the registered events.add methods. That was purely for testing with the update because the code doesn't clear up any previous duplicates. So if we entered the record and the create matched, I don't know, 100 contacts, for example, in the duplicates entity, and then we went and changed the original quick order, one of the rows of data, it would just add to that original 100, so you'd probably end up with duplicate entries on that entity. So duplicates, if that makes sense. If I go to that solution again, so it doesn't clear down the records that are created on the duplicates entity. So I'll probably remove that before I release the source code. And I've also, you can see it within the CRM Explorer. Under the plugin assemblies, so my contact matching has got the update step as well, which I did have. It triggered on only the 3 attributes, which is the address, postcode and telephone, and then I was taking a post image, because obviously if only one of those 3 changed, you'd need to know what the other one was for the searching, but that's sort of irrelevant because it really needs to only work on a create. Obviously you can add it back in if you feel there's a business need for it. So if I scroll down, I start by initializing a shorter version of the context name from the local context property that's passed in, which is, so it's just an easy way to reference the context rather than using that whole name. Likewise, the organization service, I do the same. Then the standard kind of checks, I instantiate a new late bound entity type called entity, check the input parameters if they contain an object called target, and if it's of type entity. If it is, cast that target object as an entity type to this late bound property, otherwise exit the plugin. Then when I was catering for the update message, I added this section to check for a post image. That was the other thing I meant to mention. I've registered the steps post operation, so after the order is actually successfully written to the database, because I want to associate the duplicate records to that quick order record, it needs to have a GUID in the database. It's registered synchronous, but you could run it asynchronous. You'll still have the same 2-minute time limit, regardless of whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. So yeah, it's registered post operation, which is why on that update message I had a post image in the post entity image, an image called post image. So I check if it contains that. So this would only be true if it was the update message. If it does, I cast the post entity images object to a new late bound type, iterate through the attributes that are contained within that, which is just the 3 as I previously showed you. So it would be the address, postcode and telephone. If the updated entity type, the attributes collection, doesn't contain one of those values, so if it equals false, add the key, so the telephone or whatever the actual late bound logical named field is called, and assign the value to it. So the missing ones, which we've seen this on a previous video. Then I cast the entity late bound type to an early bound, mine's obviously my prefix of STEG, my quick order entity. I'm then creating a generic collection of strings for the addresses, postcodes and telephone numbers. So initially those will be empty. I immediately add the current order's address, postcode and telephone to those lists, and what we'll do is, as we collect more contacts that are related, is add to each of these collections the resulting data from those additional contacts. So if, for example, to start with, we just put London, it would be added to the addresses as London. Then it would go off and query any other contacts that shared that same address or postcode or telephone number based on the results that are retrieved, iterate through the results, and if the city or address of that new contact isn't contained within there, or a postcode or a telephone number, add to it. So, and gradually the query will grow until you don't get any additional results. So it's maybe not the most efficient way to iterate through them, but in this example it seems to work quite well, because it's going to be a ever-growing set of criteria. So I define a new query expression on the contact entity, because that's what we're going to target. I define the column set, so we're only interested in the address one city. In my example, you might want to use line 1 of the address, might be more accurate, because you're going to get a lot of people obviously in the same city, which is nothing to do really with they're not really related just because they all reside in London, but if they're at the same first line address of a particular business, then that would obviously potentially be a match. Likewise, postcode, maybe. It was just Andy's example included that. And then the telephone, the business telephone number. Be a little bit careful with this, because the reason I said I'd release this around midday, I've spent the last about 4 hours, which is probably longer than it took to write the actual code, trying to resolve why my results weren't functioning for the telephone numbers, because I had a mixture of address 1 underscore telephone 1 and telephone 1 in my syntax, and they're actually entirely different fields. So it's just something to watch out for with the way CRM handles the address 1 and address 2, and they each have independent telephone numbers that are also independent of what the contact record also contains. So I've defined my 4 columns, so address 1 city, postcode, telephone 1, and then the full name of the contact, which I just use later to title the duplicate record. Declare a new filter expression, and its filter criteria, the logical operator is an OR, so it's any of these criteria, so it could be matching address or postcode or telephone. I then take the address, so that in my instance I'm typing a city name in from the order, and add it as a condition to that filter expression, but I'm basing it on an array. So as this addresses up here grows, and likewise the postcodes and telephones, my filter condition says any address within that array can match this address 1 city, and I repeat the same for postcode and telephone. So again, the condition operator isn't equal, it's the in operator, so it can be any of the addresses, postcodes or telephones within that collection. I then query that, so I take that actual query expression and do a retrieve multiple to get an entity collection of contacts, so the first level of related contacts to the order. I iterate through each of those contacts, cast them here to an early bound type just called contact. Then if the address 1 city of that particular record that we're iterating over is not null, and the collection does not contain that city name, the reason I did the trim is because I found that I was doing a test with Newmarket, and there was somehow one with a space after it, and it was considering them to be different cities. So again, you could also do a 2 upper or 2 lower to account for different case. So it doesn't cater for that at the moment, but it's easy enough for you guys to add that in. So I check if the address 1 city in the context of as we iterate through the results is not null, and if the collection does not already contain that city. If it's both true, I add the new city to the collection. Do the same for the postcode. If it's not null and the postcode's string array, or string list rather, does not contain that postcode, add it to the collection. Then if the number of results that were retrieved is greater than 1, obviously if it was 1 you've got an exact match and you just generate a single duplicate record. If there's more than 1 result, I'm doing this while loop, So this will just indefinitely, obviously while true is just an infinite loop, where I then query the additional related contacts. So we've added to these collections of criteria, which I can then do a further query expression, which we're just coming on to see if obviously if you've found an extra city or an extra telephone number, then when I next run the query, we'll get more results. So I'm going to continue over this while loop and keep checking the number of results until they match, so that you're not getting any additional contacts. So I've done a second query expression called query related. So we've got our original collection of related contacts. There's more than one of. Again, the same set of columns. So address 1, city, postcode, telephone 1, and full name. I set up another filter expression, which is again an OR. Add the conditions exactly as above, where it's searching if they're contained within the addresses list that's output as an array. Add the filter expression to the query expression criteria. Do a subsequent retrieve multiple of this new second query expression, and if the original results from up here, the contacts, so from the first query, if the new results don't match, so the chances are if there's additional criteria been added, this related contacts collection will be greater than the contacts collection. I haven't said a great, I just said not equal, because this will always, well, not always, it will be bigger in general. If you've added more criteria, there'll be more records that will fulfill those criteria in an OR situation. So this will not be equal. So it then iterates through each of those, the related contacts, casts to an early bound type again, does exactly the same check if the city is not null and it's not already contained in the addresses collection or list. Again, adds it, then sets the original contacts results to what we've just retrieved, and obviously then the loop will then continue, the while loop will jump back up to here. It will set up another new query expression, but now you've got a potentially bigger list of addresses, postcodes, and telephone numbers. And then if this next query of that doesn't, if they do then match, so if no additional addresses, cities, postcodes, or telephones were added, then the new bigger contacts collection would equal this new retrieve multiples result set, in which case it will break out of the while loop and come down to here. I did attempt to use the new bulk processing method for this execute multiple request, whereby I was trying to do these create requests, add them in, so you'd have, I think you're limited to 1,000 is the problem, and then do this, use the service.execute method for that execute multiple request to actually execute all the creates, because the slowest part of this code is the actual create step. That's taking probably 90% of the time. The actual querying iterations is taking a few seconds, but I've had to just go back to just doing a for each loop over all the final set of results, create a new duplicate early bound type. Obviously yours will have your own prefix, relate the contact, which is there, relate the order, the originating order, and then I'm just giving it a title. So I've just said related with a space, took the contact's full name, and then space to quick order, and then the title of the order that got typed in and that triggered the whole process, and then just a standard service.create on a per record basis. As I say, this, even with lesser examples, I haven't had time to debug it, but this execute multiple request, I was getting a platform fault, so apparently it's a lot more efficient for bulk processing of any type of, so you got create requests and so on. but it's not too slow using just the iterative method. But if you do come up against the 2-minute time limit, you may have to look into using this execute multiple request. So that's the principle of it. It's not as complicated as I thought in the end. Whether it's flexible enough to be applied to other scenarios, you'll have to give me some feedback, and if there's anything we can look at together to modify it. I think a couple of you guys have actually done your own equivalent, so it'd be interesting to see how yours differ. But if I go back to CRM and my sales, I'll start off by showing you my contact database. So I've got I think there's nearly 18,000 contacts in here from a previous example. What I've done is, on a few instances, I've populated a postcode, so I've put this CV370HW and a phone number on a few of them as well. So if let me just lose that filter there. So I've also took a bunch of them, just bulk edited, and I've put that same phone number on ones with a different city. So between the various individual rows, so if I said something like Stowmarket, there's examples, and I pick a postcode, I'll get all the Stowmarket customers, then the postcode where it contains, I'll use this CV37, that would then pick up Worcester and Wymondham, if that's how you say it. That will pick up these other cities, but also it'd pick up this additional phone number, which will then go off and iterate, or do a bigger query inclusive of the phone number. So we should end up with anything that's got this postcode or this phone number, this city, and any child ones. So that's just to give you an idea of how I've been playing around with the different related data. It only goes probably a few iterations deep on my example. I don't know to the extent of Andy's data how many child relationships he will have, but I've tried this with sort of approaching 1,000 records. It seems to take only a few seconds. So if I go back to sales, my new custom entity, quick orders, and I enter one, so I could start by, I'll just put, I don't know, 20 cases of wine. So for to start with, I'll just put a city in, and I've got to put these, I've made them compulsory. I don't think my code handles if they're blank, so I've made them business required. So for now, if we just put something that's not actually, so that's not even a true postcode in the UK, and again just a junk number that's not on any of the other records, all I should get here is duplicates for just any Stowmarket matching addresses. So if I save that, so you can see it's saving in the corner and running through the plugin, and that will obviously be retrieving and then iterating over again for additional addresses. So that's took, don't know, 15 seconds or so. So then related to this 20 cases of wine, I've now got this duplicates set of results. It's 538, all with Stowmarket. Don't know if any of these, no, so there's no postcodes, because most of my databases, it was only a partial import. Yeah, so none of those contain postcodes or phone numbers. So if I go back to, so that was 538, if I do another new order, so 15 cases of champagne, do Stowmarket again, but this time if I put that CV370HW in, and I'll just put a junk number, so we saw that other 0121 number, and we saw that this postcode related to other cities, which then had relationships to other phone numbers. So now if I save again you can see it's saving in the corner. So it shouldn't take too long. I haven't, obviously, I've done this sort of 1,000 or so records, so that's took again 10 to 15 seconds. But you guys are going to have to test it on your online environment or on-premise environments if you're on-premise to see what kind of response times you get. So again, go to duplicates. We had 538 last time. We've now got 581. So as well as the Stow Market results, if we scroll down, so we can now see there's this 0121115555 business phone and a completely different city. But that will be to do with the fact that the CV37 postcode, if I do contains data, so that CV37 postcode retrieved this result, for instance, for this city and that phone number, which then gone off and looked for any records with that phone number. So if I do a contains data on the phone number, and found all these other results for this Oldbur city as well. So they can appear to be entirely unrelated, but I think that was what the request Andy was looking for, was to have this cascading, is that the diagram? I think it's Marco's one, where you start off with your 3 pieces of information, find the child ones, then they might not, only share 1 piece of information, but subsequent searches of those child contacts could have wholly unrelated information, so it can cascade quite deep into your results set. Yeah, I think that completes my interpretation of it. Obviously, if you can leave any feedback and if you've got any questions, or if anyone's got any ideas for how to change it, or want to submit your code on screen onto the Google Plus, and we can implement it or try or both methods, and then I can always record an additional video. But I'll post this full source code up. I probably will leave the update message in, but I'd possibly, based on your business rules, if you want to leave the update in, you'd need to add some process of cleaning up the existing duplicates on the update, which again could add additional processing time, and you may push yourself well past the 2-minute time limit. That is something we could look at, introducing whether you put the first set of results into a holding entity and then trigger another copy of the plugin or a workflow to do the subsequent iterations. May give you sufficient processing time, but mine doesn't appear to be too slow. I think I tried one of the bigger ones I did. If I go to my quick orders, was Newmarket in my data seems to have nearly 1,000. So if I do Newmarket, and again I could do the CV37, or I'll do the phone number in this instance. 0121 123 and then I save that. So that's now saving. So I'm not timing it, but it's probably about 15 to 20 seconds with all the creates it has to do. Obviously, the more related records, the longer the create's going to take. I mean, the query expressions are fairly quick. The other thing it won't handle is above the 5,000 record limit. So if you're conscious that so that's took, I don't know, 15 to 20 seconds. If you're aware that you're definitely going to have over 5,000 results, when you do the retrieve multiple, you'd have to actually build in using the paging cookie and retrieve all of the results together before you start the iteration, if this is the way you take your solution. But that one's obviously now completed that 30 cases of rosé. Obviously got like 911. So again, it's got these old burr, and there should be a whole bunch of those in there. Can't order by those. If I just do contains data again. So we've got this whole bunch of other city types and postcode types. Even though we did that BS1 code, because it had a matching phone number, it's found that related record. So thanks again for watching, and feel free to obviously fire back any questions and queries, any future requests. Thanks, bye.